winners. Welcome to the Win a Pageant podcast. I'm your coach, Alycia Darby, and I've got a special guest for you today. Her name is Allyson Rowe. Now, you've probably heard of Allyson Rowe before because she is Miss Washington USA 2014. And girl, her story is like, this is like unlike any other pageant story you've ever heard before. Okay, so I cannot wait to get in it. But now, the beautiful thing is, so that was 2014. Since then, she's got so many cool things going. She is a motivational and inspirational and probably just all things fabulous speaker. She travels all around the country speaking to women, building confidence and helping them. In fact, her passion is helping women identify their unique characteristics, like truly who they are, and then walk it out confidently. I love that vision, Allyson. That's so cool. So we're going to dive into that a little bit more. And to add on top of all of this, she does do pageant coaching. Yes. She's a makeup and skin care specialist and a businesswoman. So this girl's got it going on. So, and Allyson, you're writing your first book. So I can't wait to hear more about that as well. We got all kinds of things to talk about today. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alycia. It's such an honor. I was so excited when I heard about the opportunity, and I'm excited to see what we have in store today. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Well, start first by telling everyone your story about pageantry. Because when you won your title, it was a little bit unconventional, probably even for you. So share a little bit about that story.
Absolutely. So, being a girl from Spokane, Washington is not a big pageant state anyways. I grew up not knowing anyone that ever did pageants. It was literally, in the truest sense of the word, pageantry was non-existent to me. I had never even watched a Miss USA before I went to Miss USA. I knew nothing about it. I was recruited through my Facebook by one of the Pageants Northwest recruiters. I had no idea how they came across me. I thought it was a prank, so I ignored her 3 times in a row. And then finally, I just felt a stirring in my spirit from the Lord, and he said, I need you to look into this a little further. I thought I was literally hearing voices and going crazy. And so I did, and I contacted her name. Her name was Christine, and I said, I don't want to waste your time. I just want you to know that I'm not interested in doing the pageant. But I so want to honor you and thank you for reaching out to me and being persistent. But unfortunately, I'm just not probably the right person. And
wow, Allyson, I got to stop you right there, because what's beautiful about your reaction makes you the best person. Like, she was probably like, whoa, this woman is so genuine and so just like willing to respond. Because you're right. Sometimes, and pageant women everywhere, we get messages all the time where it's like, oh, do my pageant, even if it's not maybe a perfect fit. So it's interesting. I'm sure that you were like, this is so weird. Like, why would they even, but it's beautiful that you were willing to say, okay, out of respect for you as a human, I'm going to respond to this and share with you. Wow. Okay. So how did she react?
Thank you. She just kept plowing right on through. She wasn't fazed at all. And that actually threw me off, because I'm thinking, I just told this girl no in the nicest way possible. And she literally just wasn't going to take no for an answer. And so she came back and she said, just give me 5 minutes on the phone. I just want to tell you why I think you would be a great fit. And so I told my mom, I said, Mom, this sounds crazy. And I didn't tell anybody else. And she said, well, I think you should call her. So when my mom said that, I was like, what? You think I was expecting her to be like, Allie, what are you doing? That's crazy. But my mom was just, very, I think she was intrigued also, but she was supportive of, I think you should check into it. So long story short, I did. We ended up talking, Alycia, on the phone. This is a pageant recruiter, right? I know nothing about pageants at this point. We didn't even hardly talk about pageantry. We literally talked for about an hour and a half. She shared her testimony with me, things that God's done in her life. I shared her part of mine. And I got off the phone thinking, wait a minute, isn't this a Miss USA pageant recruiter? We're just talking about Jesus and everything God's doing. So, that really in a lot of ways, to be truthful with you, blew my preconceived notions away.
Yeah,
because I have known.
you're right. There's all these stereotypes, particularly within the Miss
Yeah.
USA pageant, but pageantry in general, about
Yeah.
how it's like, just like many ideas that we have about the entertainment industry,
Yeah.
it's like kind of clouded with this like dark
Right.
haze. So then here you are chatting with this recruiter, and she's like a light shining with great
Yeah.
beauty, and you're thinking, that's not what I thought pageantry
Right.
was, right? So then you decided to enter the pageant.
I just reluctantly, I decided for the patch, and it wasn't honestly, it was out of obedience. I felt the Lord tell me, and even after that conversation with her, it took me a good, few weeks before I finally said I'll do this. Everything that they did was over in Seattle, and again, I'm in Eastern Washington, so it was totally the favor of the Lord. I don't know if I can say this on here, but hopefully none of the other girls that year were listening, but they literally let me jump through hoops to get into the pageant because I was in school full time. I had 2 full-time jobs. So between 7 days a week, I had no free time.
Yeah.
And they said, we're going to waive, there's certain things that we have to do with you in person. We're going to go ahead and let that go. And I was like, this has got to be God, because I was throwing out every excuse in the book.
Wow.
And the Lord just kept overriding it.
Yeah.
So I reluctantly entered, and the whole time feeling so overwhelmed. I wasn't able to go to one training session, one workshop, nothing. So by the time I got to pageant weekend, I had no training other than myself and the Lord in a gym, trying to figure out how to walk in heels, because I'm more of an athlete than anything else.
Yeah.
And literally just having no idea what the Lord was doing. I was also in a very abusive relationship at the time as well. So there was a lot of things behind the scenes. My crowning moment.
Wait, hang on. Before you go to crowning, how long did you have to prepare? Like, how long between?
By the time I said yes.
Yeah.
Let's see. I finally committed, fully committed in like the very beginning of, well, I'd say it was like the end of April of 2013.
Okay.
And then the pageant was October of 2013.
Okay. So that's like 6 months or so, maybe just under 6 months. Okay. Yeah. So still a good amount of time, but with all of the other things you had going on in your life, it sounds like God had to use his favor, knowing that this was his plan for you to align, and I honestly believe that in the Bible it talks about he will make your path straight.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
It's so true. Like when you think about all the little things that we have to like circumnavigate, and you mentioned like, oh, I hope the other girls aren't listening that year, because of course then you ended up winning. And so all of the women who were really wanting it and trying really hard and things, but I don't think that I don't know them, but I would guess that if they have the spiritual background you have, it would make sense to them that if you were divinely decided to be the winner, God would make your path straight. They could have done anything to resist it. Even if you did go through all those different things, you still were destined to win by simply taking that action,
Yeah.
So it's so cool. So you stepped into it. So then you won. So, but let me ask you this. So you were going through all the motions. You had to have at least tried a little, right? Like you probably, by the time you got into stage, did you have a mindset shift at all that you were like, okay, I get it. Like, I get God wants this for me, so I'm gonna do my best. Like, when did that happen along the way?
I think it happened the whole time. I mean, it really did. I think anything that God, because in a good way, I'm very competitive with myself. So I really don't view people as competition, but myself. And so carrying and being an athlete, carrying that into my training physically, if I was going to commit, I was going to commit all the way. And I was going to make sure that everything I did, I was doing with excellence to the best of my ability, not really knowing as far as pageantry goes if it was right or wrong or what. I didn't know. I just knew what I knew. And so honestly, Alycia, even up to, stage time, the only thing the Lord told me was this, and this is what I tell every girl that I ever coach. He said, Allie, do not look to the right or to the left. You need to do what I have called you to do. And all I knew is God told me to be myself, to glorify his name, and to walk out my assignment for that weekend. And he didn't tell me if I was going to win. All he said was, if you do what I've called you to do, everything will be okay.
Wow.
He didn't say that I would win. And to be honest, like I said in our earlier conversation, winning wasn't really a part of my agenda. I had other stuff I wanted to do. And I told the Lord that, I made sure he was aware of that.
You're like, now hang on, God, because I got a few words myself.
I just finished school and I want to go do my career, and I don't want to live in Washington. And so, but that's what it was. And here's what's true is when we walk in our assignment, we're anointed for that assignment. And when you're anointed for your assignment, there is an assurance. It doesn't mean that and here's what I learned in that moment was I can't walk the way she can walk because I'm not her. So if I try to do that, even though she does it like she slays that thing all day, if I try to do that, I'm probably not going to look very good because that's not the way I'm made. Yeah. And she can't walk the way I walk because she's not supposed to. Yeah. So there was little things that the Lord, without me even realizing it, began placing in my mind and showing me that weekend. So I literally put blinders on. Wow, and I didn't conversate with a lot of the girls. I mean, I did, but I was very focused because I just wanted to walk out my assignment. And looking back at the video of the pageant weekend, it was very obvious that I was never nervous. Wow. Isn't that weird? I was never nervous. I think there was I understood the seriousness of it, but I wasn't, I was never nervous. I was never scared. I just knew that, the Lord, and here's what I learned. The Lord never calls you to something that will defeat you. And so that for me was, I told God, I said, you're either about to make me look really stupid or, you're going to get crazy glory through this. And obviously the latter is what happened. Yeah. So, it was such a testimony to me of obedience and God's faithfulness, and his plan in it was not about Allie having a crown and a sash. It literally saved my life because like I said, I was in an abusive relationship and things were getting a lot more severe at that point. And I am such a woman of my word. I don't know how to say one thing and live another. And the Lord knew that. And he knew, Allie, you either have to grab onto this crown or you have to go this way. Wow. And you have to make a choice. And so when I won that crown, it was literally the Lord giving me that second option of an out. He literally gave me an out. Wow. And here you go. And I fully believe with the way that relationship was heading, there's no way. And so it for me was, I'm an extreme person, and I think the Lord knew it was something that I would walk out properly, and it was bigger than me. And so his grace was written all over it, and he had to crown me before man to show me I was already crowned in heaven. Yes. And it was a powerful moment. So it was there's so much about my crown that people don't. It really wasn't about the crown for me. It was about, it really was the destiny of it, like you said. It really was. Wow.
Yeah, so I'm curious to hear more about because this is something that people do struggle with. It's a real life thing that they find themselves in what I call a rut, and you either get pushed into a rut, you get drug into a rut, or you fall into a rut, but somehow you get there. So to get out of that, it really does take a lot of action, right? Yeah. And I think that, like you described, for you, your specific story is that you knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that God was calling you to this pageant. Yeah. And then in hindsight, you could look back on it and say, wow, isn't that interesting that because I won, that's the thing that pulled you out of a rut. But for many people, just the competition's sake in and of itself, or the one person that they meet, the contestant that stands three rows in front or something, that's the woman that's going to change her life. That's going to be the person that pulls her out of a rut. Or that's going to be, it might not have anything to do with the pageant at all. It might be 3 weeks after the pageant, some major thing happens, And so I just want to help the listeners realize that it doesn't have to be that you won the pageant and that's how you get out of the rut. God can use so many things. But if you follow that calling like you did obediently, not knowing whether or not you're going to win, not even really caring, not letting anything rest on the outcome, but rather just rest on the obedience. And
Yes.
then now in hindsight, you can look back and say, oh, that's because I have a story about how I lost a pageant and that was my getting me out of the rut. And so
Wow.
so it's so interesting how God
Yeah.
can use, gosh, he uses even pageants. Isn't he
Oh my
amazing?
gosh.
Like,
Anything.
I
Yes.
know. That's so
Everything.
cool. Yeah. So, okay.
Oh,
So tell me
bigger
about,
than us.
yes, totally. Okay. So tell me about this. So you won your state pageant. You
Yeah.
now are showing up on the stage of Miss USA.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you have to do as
Yeah.
a fully strong, faith-filled woman is
Yeah.
prance around on stage
Yeah.
in a swimsuit.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell me what that was like. Like, how did you handle? It's one thing at the state level, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, you can kind of like, it's real quick, or it's maybe
Yeah.
small, or there's not a whole lot of people there, so you might not feel as condemned, for
Yeah.
example. But
Sure.
when you're on national television and you're now an instant celebrity and now you've got to stand by your faith, what
Yeah.
was going on in your mind, and how did you manage that?
Yeah. Yeah. Such a good question that I get asked so often. And I, thankfully, I kind of went through those motions prior to state. That was actually a big precaution for me of, do I really want to do this? And that was one of the questions I asked. Do I have to wear a two-piece? I'm totally comfortable wearing a one-piece. Do I have to wear a two-piece? And I wasn't even sure if I was going to wear a two-piece at my state competition. And I prayed about it, and they said, nope, you don't have to wear a two-piece. You can wear a one-piece, whatever you're comfortable with. They don't judge you on your swimsuit. So the technical things, and the same obviously at Miss USA, they don't judge you on your swimsuit, but those things I think helped me make it more of an educated decision as far as the actual system itself. But then I had to take that and I had to go to prayer, because I had to say, Lord, I'm a worship leader at my church right now, and I have young girls that look up to me right now. And is this setting an okay example for them? And I just need your vision on this, your perspective on this, because it's not that I was insecure. It was that I just wanted to know, is this setting the right example?
Yeah.
Why or why not? And so when I went to prayer, the Lord he told me, he said, Allie, the swimsuit doesn't degrade the woman. Like, an inanimate object can't bring you shame. An inanimate object cannot condemn you. It is the spirit that a woman carries within herself. And he said, when you go to the beach and you see women in a swimsuit, are you feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm being so shameful? And I was like, well, no. And he said, so what's the difference? You're not going to act seductive. You're not going to bring a sexual spirit into this. A spirit is what makes you unclean. It's not what goes in you, it's what comes out of you. And so when he gave me that perspective, I thought, wow, Lord, what a powerful thing, because so many women in pageants, whether they're of faith or not, get shamed for wearing a swimsuit. But the truth is that a swimsuit cannot shame us. We are the ones that carry that. We are the ones that walk in that. And I made it a point to set a standard. I am not going to let this bring shame on me when I have a heart of purity. A heart of purity is your heart condition. It's not, necessarily just the act of abstaining from something or what you're wearing, or, that's a product of it, but that's not what makes me pure.
Yeah.
And so the Lord had to really rearrange some of my thought process. And so then taking that into Miss USA, obviously, like you said, you're now on a national stage and everyone's watching. And honestly, Alycia, for me, the Lord had worked that out prior to where I was able to walk out there just so empowered and knowing God backed me. Knowing the Lord had given me permission and in fact called me. It sounds like an oxymoron, calling you to wear a swimsuit, but the Lord was making a statement, and we need to stop judging stupid stuff. We need to get out of this crazy, I'm really sorry, but wearing makeup doesn't make me sinful. Like, it's makeup. It's your heart condition. And so that is what I think, if there's one thing I could speak into women that might be struggling with this or have struggled with it or are getting shame or judgment, is they have to know it is your heart condition that the Lord looks at. It is your heart that he wrestles with. And you can walk out there and be just as modest in a two-piece swimsuit as a nun can, dressed to her neck.
Yeah.
Why? It is your heart condition.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? 2 Samuel, 1 Samuel says this: God does not look at the things man looks at. He doesn't look at outward appearance. He looks at your heart. And that's only between us and God.
Mm-hmm.
We have to determine what that is. But I think that would be the biggest thing for women is, you need to let go of the shame that men have put on you. And I mean men as in people.
Yeah.
They have put on you
Mm-hmm.
because they're the ones locked in a bondage.
Yeah.
They're the ones locked in a lie that God did not tell them that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we let that go and walk in everything God has called us to be.
Yeah. And with confidence, our confidence comes from God, because if
Absolutely.
you get a direct download from God, okay, this is what I'm meant to do. This is what I'm supposed to do. You walk it out, and God works on the hearts of others. So it doesn't have to be on you. Oh, if I do. And I think it's also interesting to a note as well that you described, like, it's your spirit, right? So we're assuming that the person's spirit is right with God, and that then they show up on stage with that modesty, and then they carry it out. But the truth could also be seen, because oftentimes we look at other people performing, we see other people, and we're like, "Ew, whoa, what is going on with that one?"
Yes.
But it's less. That's right. That's exactly it. Yeah. So you got to put it in check as individuals. We've got to say, okay, for me, what do I need to do? What do I got to do to be right with this, to make this feel so that I'm not causing other people to stumble? And how's that going to show up authentically? Yeah.
Yes. Well, and I'm so glad that you touched on that, because that was something, to be honest with you, it wasn't, because when the Lord was at, he had to walk me through all of these thoughts that I had to find out what the issue was. And the truth is it was never the swimsuit that was my issue. It was the presentation of it. And that is exactly what you're talking about, is I would watch women, and granted, I think it's their insecurity. They're not bad. It's that they don't realize they can just be who they are. So they put on this performance, or they put on this seductive sexual presentation because they think that it's going to get them the title. Some of them it does, some of them it doesn't. But that was what I was wrestling with, is I said, Lord, I can't do that. And he said, you're not supposed to.
Wow.
That's not what you're supposed to do. And I didn't. And I was like, I'm not going to go out there and shake my bum around. I'm not doing that. I'm
Good girl.
Go off, and I'm going to be Allie, and I'm going to, I'll be confident. But I'm not. My body is not for sale. It is a instrument of the Lord. And so even in a moment like that feels so controversial in the church, the Lord, and that's what it was, Alycia. If I didn't have his permission and his empowerment, I would not have been able to be confident in that moment. But I felt not only confident, but excited to go out and make this statement of, I am a woman of faith. I am a Christian woman that lives it out every single day, and I have no shame being in this place, because the Lord has called me here, and if you don't like it, take it up with him.
Yes, girl. Oh, that's beautiful. So good. Wow.
So empowering.
Yes. Yeah. So tell me about this. One of the things that we struggle with is, as a Christian woman in pageantry, is sometimes we are asked to do things, as a title holder, you get asked to do all kinds of things, oh, hey, I'm having a party at my bar. Will you come be the spokesperson? Or we're doing a photo shoot that, might be a little like, ooh, risque, that might go against your core values. How did you make decisions about that? And do you have an example of a time that you used your core values to be like, okay, this is where I draw the line?
Yes, absolutely. So actually one of the times was at Miss USA.
Okay.
Up until that point, my directors were so supportive, and I think they really knew, that I didn't just talk about Jesus. I really lived Jesus. So they are such people of integrity and faith as well. So they never even presented me with an opportunity that felt questionable. They were pretty, even in our contract as a state title holder with them, not just NBC, but with them, they're pretty cut and dry about everything, which I appreciated. But at Miss USA, I remember when we had to do our official swimsuit photo shoot with Fidel, And, he was wanting us to do all these different kinds of poses and all of these things. And I didn't know who Fidel was. I mean, like I say, I never even watched Miss USA till this point, right? So it's my turn to go out, and he's telling me to do all these things. And I remember looking at him and I said, I don't do that. And he said, well, what do you do? And I said, I don't know, but not that. I'm not going to do that.
Wow.
And it was this pose that was very, it just wasn't me. It wasn't godly. It wasn't even fun. It was just yucky. And I don't think that his intent was that. I think that that's just normal. It's normal in that world.
Yeah.
And, what's normal to people isn't normal to God. So I just said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. And he said, okay, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I don't know. We're going to have to figure it out. And so we ended up doing one shot, and we ended up getting it. So I remember just praying in that moment. I said, Lord, this is not kind of my thing, and I just need your grace on this. And so we ended up I think 2 different poses, and he was like, well, we got it. Perfect.
Wow.
And yeah, it was like the Lord just, anytime I invited him into those moments, he graced it and removed all that. But there was a moment where I had to tell Fidel, who's the official Miss USA photographer for God knows how many years, that I wasn't going to do what he wanted me to do. And I didn't feel bad. I wasn't rude. I was just very matter of fact. And the Lord honored me in that. So I think with one of the things we have to realize is that, compromise does not equal success. It just doesn't. And I think depending on whose scope you're looking through might determine that for you. But when we say, I'm a woman of God, I believe in the Lord, I live by his word, then that means that we uphold the standard. And the word is the standard, no matter what situation you're in. And God honors uncompromising obedience. And so when we place his word in every situation, he honors that in you. For example, I'm a perfect example. We go back to my crowning moment. I wasn't fit for that situation on paper. I didn't have any of the credentials on paper. Did it make sense that I really won in hindsight? Not really. Not compared to my top 5, not compared to those things. But why? I uncompromisingly, against what I thought was best, obeyed the Lord. And so he went before me, and I played that out in any and every situation. I played that out in my wardrobe throughout my entire year. I played that out in the way that I would interact with people. I never took photos with alcohol in them, ever. Not even though I wasn't ever drinking, but I wouldn't even take photos with alcohol around. Why? Because I didn't want to leave any opportunity for question. You live above reproach, and the Lord honors that. And now, during my year, your year goes fast. It is 1 year of your life, and it's one of the most amazing years of my life so far, but it was just one. But that, because I chose in every situation to live above reproach, whether it was normal for a title holder or not, it was normal for me. And the Lord now has used that to open so many other doors after the fact. I'm busier now than I was then.
That's great.
But it's because I never compromised. And in the moment, the enemy wants to compromise the call of God on your life. And he makes it look really good. And he'll send opportunities that look right. But just because something looks right doesn't mean it's God. So, for I think those women that feel what's right, what isn't, I think And if the word of God doesn't permit you to do it, the answer is no. And he will honor that.
And Allyson, what you just mentioned there, I wanna dig a little bit deeper on it. We only have a few more minutes left, but this is important. Because you've spoke a lot about how you've heard from God, and he told me this. And for somebody who hasn't really heard that, I want to know more from your perspective. And I know everyone has a little bit of a different perspective, but it's helpful to hear from you. What does that really look like or sound like or feel like? Like, how do you know it's God? How do you know it's God?
Such a good question. One of the things that I actually did a teaching on this a few months ago. So Alycia, if I after having spent a little bit of time with you right now,
Mhm.
if I were to close my eyes and hear you speaking, I don't have to see you in front of me to know that it's your voice,
Mm.
because I've spent a little bit of time with you right now. So there's an identification. Now, maybe if you and I were in a whole room of people and there was a bunch of women talking, I might not be able to identify it yet.
Okay.
But I like to relate it to, if I'm with my family, or if I'm with my, my mom, or if I'm with one of my close friends, I don't need to see them to recognize their voice. I'll know it. Why? I've spent time with them. I know what they sound like. I know what they sound like when they're happy. I know what they sound like when they're not happy, because I have spent time with them. You get to know them. God is the same way. When we spend time with him, there's an identification, because I know what the Spirit of God feels like. Why? Because I seek it. I intentionally spend time with God. And in that way, it is kind of a personification of him. He has characteristics: peace, joy, love, patience, long-suffering, kindness, humility, all of those things. So when I say, I hear the voice of the Lord, I think that I think he speaks to each of us in a way that we understand. So how I might hear him might be totally different from the way you would hear him. I know the Lord speaks a lot to me through signs, like actual signs. And I take time almost every night to go into my car and I just drive, because I don't have distraction. I pray, I turn off the radio, I turn off my phone, and I just go to get away and hear the Lord. And a lot of times if I'm praying, even if it's very specific, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes I just say, Lord, what do you want to tell me right now? I can look up. It happens more often than not. And there will be, whether it's a street sign or a business sign or a billboard, or, you want to talk about like blinking red signs. Like God does that for me a lot, because I'm a very black and white person. Here's what also I do. When I do feel like I've heard from the Lord, I immediately go to my word. And I immediately say, Lord, confirm it in the word. Show me in the word. Everything goes back to the word. So I make sure, if I say I heard the Lord, I know I'm not just saying that. Because I'm accountable to God. If he didn't say, I don't need to say that. But I always make sure I go to the word and, Lord, confirm this for me. Show me this in the word. And he does it. He's so faithful. And a lot of times too, it'll be, some people might call it an epiphany or something, but there's such a peace on whatever the Lord's telling me. Like with the pageant, it was so intimidating, but I had so much peace, even though I had no understanding. But I had so much peace about it. He gave me just, this overwhelming peace, like Philippians says, that transcends all understanding, but yet we have peace. So I think for people that might be questioning, what does that look like? The more you spend time with the Lord, the more you're in your word, worship, prayer, the more you will recognize him. Your relationship is personal.
That's beautiful.
That's my best, guidance on that.
And it's, I've heard someone describe it before that, like, I love what you said, like, that you would know my voice. If you heard it, but you weren't looking, you would be like, oh, that sounds like Alycia, right? And the more you know someone, the more you can tell. But haven't you even been in situations where, like, you're about to do something and you hear your mom tell you, like, oh, now Allyson, you knock that off, and she says, and you're like, I know what she would say right this moment. It's like, that's how I experience God too, is that I'm like, oh, he would, if he were here right now, this is what he would say. It's like that type of feeling. And it starts with get in the word, right? It starts with just pray. Like, just pray, even if you don't feel like he's really talking right now, just keep trying, just keep trying, because then as soon as he does, you're like, oh, I think that was it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's so cool. It sounds like that's what you experienced when you were in that photo shoot at Miss USA, that you just felt like, this is, because your spirit was like in turmoil. You could sense like, nope, this is like getting ready to touch a hot fire, that same feeling that you have like, no, don't do it.
Yeah.
You could still touch the hot fire, but you're going to get burned. It's the same.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And that, and the photo probably would have looked amazing.
Yeah.
But it wasn't something that I would have stood by.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been proud of it. I wouldn't have felt, up until that point, everything was raising a standard of saying, no, Christian women can dominate pageantry. Like, we don't have to be this quiet, reserved, we can go out confident and say, no, God put me here. And that everything up until that moment and that was the first moment really throughout, I think, my entire reign that thus far, the first moment that I felt like, nope, that's not my assignment. That's not
Wow.
what I'm called to do.
Yeah.
And I had the choice,
Yeah.
I could have totally done that,
Yeah.
but I think I would have defeated the purpose
Yeah.
of, being beautiful, being confident, being empowered while still remaining true to God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it seems like a fine line, but it really isn't.
Yeah.
When you really know the boundary,
Yeah.
it's pretty easy not to cross it.
Yeah. Would you be willing to share some of the boundaries that you set for yourself? So if there's a pageant woman out there that's like, I like this idea, but what does this actually look like? Like, I love the rule about no photos with alcohol in it, period.
Yes.
Set your drinks down if you want to picture with me.
Yes.
Okay, so that's one. What might be some other things that it's just like, boom, here's the rule. These are my boundaries.
Yep. So I never, during my reign, I never set foot in a bar.
Okay.
Never.
And how old were you at the time?
I was 25.
Wow. And you just
25.
skipped the bars altogether.
Number one, because I think of my faith. Yeah. And I have friends that aren't saved, and even friends that are saved that like to go out and just have fun. Nothing wrong with that at all. I just, as a title holder, it was so important for me to raise the standard. And I'm not saying that because the standard was low.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I'm saying that because God's name was on it, and I wanted to uphold that, live above reproach and make sure, that I am someone that there's never a question. I think that people like to talk and people get jealous, or people, and when you're putting yourself in any situation, me having a glass of water with ice could turn into Allie was drinking vodka all night and just was out of control. And for me, I just felt like I wanted to honor my title to the utmost of my ability. I wanted to honor God. And so any position that was questionable, I didn't do it. So I never put myself in a bar, even when I wasn't wearing crown and sash, I just didn't do it. Obviously the photo thing, I never, and to this day I still carry this, being a speaker, but I never ever was in a room with a man alone, ever.
Yeah.
Not one time. Never in a car with a man alone. I was never alone with a man.
Mm-hmm.
Again, people like to talk and make stories, and I just feel like, wisdom is just don't go there. So
my husband and I have that role right now in our marriage. Yeah. That we don't do, you don't go for a business lunch. We don't do business lunches with someone of the opposite sex, just me and the other person. We don't do the room alone. You don't give someone a ride of the opposite sex. And for the same reasons. And
it's not even a trust thing. It's you protect.
Yes.
It's a protection of, and for me, that's what it was. It's not that I didn't trust myself. It was that I was protecting my title, and I was protecting my assignment. And in today's culture, we get so lackadaisical on those things. And I just felt like, I can't speak for the standard that he called past title holders, but I could speak for what he called me. And I just knew that there was very clear things he told me to do. The other one was the way that I dressed. I didn't do one swimsuit shoot. I did one, but it was kind of an all-encompassing. It wasn't just a swim shoot. We did, evening gown and all these other things, sportswear. And it was very casual and modest and fun. But I never did just a swimsuit shoot my entire year, except for Miss USA, because we had to. Because that wasn't the image I was trying to portray. I didn't want to be known for that,
And even the one shoot you did do, you still protected that image. You were wise about it because you had that rule in place when you showed up in front of Fidel, like, okay, here I am in a swimsuit. This is the one rule I have, but now here I am. Okay, let me protect this. Like, let me be wise. You had your guard up. Yeah.
And I knew that shoot was obviously coming.
Yeah.
But I had no issues with doing it. But there's boundaries. And so I think for me, it was just, honestly, Alycia, would I do this if I wasn't a title holder? No. Okay, so why would I be doing it now? So
Good.
for me, it's just, it really, we say stay true to yourself, and on some days that can sound so cliche, but at the end of the day, it's really true. And in order to stay true to yourself, though, you have to know who you are. And so I knew, I definitely knew what I wasn't at that time in my life. I don't think I fully knew who I was yet. I think we're always learning, but so there was just certain things that, like I was so careful of my image and portraying that. Like I said, I was never in a room with a guy alone. What else? And there were certain things, I never wanted to do events that would be questionable, as far as I know a lot of the girls did certain runway shows, or some things that I just felt they weren't appropriate for me. And so no matter how much the exposure would have given me, or it just wasn't right for me. So
this is great.
Yeah,
this is a really great list. I would encourage, to the woman listening right now, my encouragement is write your list before you win. Because as soon as you win, all of the requests start coming, and it's like a dizziness of, you got to answer real fast. You feel all this pressure. But if you create your list based on your core values, in my program, I have a interview program, and one of the very first things that we do is create our core values. So we go through all of the experience you have. You say, okay, what are my core values? What do I stand for as a human? So I would encourage, use your core values, discover what is it you're really about. Use that, create your roles, and it can be whatever you want it to be. Like you make up the rules. I think that as title holders, we tend to think like, oh, well, the director tells me what to do. But the pageant woman is the leader. She's the one that sets the pace and the direction of her year. So you got to own that with confidence. Yeah. So Allyson, so tell me a little bit, we're going to wrap up here. So thank you for giving all this information. These girls have got a lot of stuff to really use. But I'm curious what is next for you, because I know you mentioned writing a book. Can you tell us a little bit about your book?
Yes. So I am writing a book on being single and empowered. It sounds interesting because we're talking about pageantry, so shifting gears a little bit. One of the things that I get asked about more than anything else, because I'm single, is how to be single and be happy. I mean, it's crazy to me that there is such a stigma. I'm 28 years old and so many people, everywhere I go, everywhere I speak, the first question is, Allie, where's your husband? And I'm thinking, am I supposed to have one? I mean, I didn't know. It's not a big deal. But there's such, I think, especially in the church, in faith, you got to get married by this time, or you got to do this, you got to do that. And there's a lot of young people I see, of all ages actually, that are settling for wrong relationships because they're impatient, or because they haven't found that contentment with the Lord. And as I can speak personally that the wrong relationship will destroy you. And so I'm writing a book on what I've learned in my short, young 28 years of life. I preach on it all over the country. But you know what? Sometimes being single for a season is a calling, just like anything else. And there's things the Lord cultivates in you in your season of singleness that are imperative for your season of marriage. So I'm writing a book on that. I'm putting out my own story as well, of just coming through a relationship of abuse and learning, teaching others how I overcame that with the Lord, what the process was, and how I'm able to walk empowered now as a single during my time of singleness. So it's exciting. It's one of the most difficult things I've ever done. That process of being diligent and sitting down and forcing myself to write and really hearing the heart of the Father on it and what He wants done. But it's been so liberating at the same time. So that's a big project. I'm also working on starting a pageant for special needs kids, and I am so excited about it. I'm in the process now of just doing some planning. We're trying to decide a name, which states we're going to go to, but that is hopefully within the next year going to take its launch. And that is something I am probably more excited about than anything, is to crown these kids and just let them know, you're just as important, you're just as valued. You're not less than, you're different. We're all different. And the Lord sees you just the same. And it's so important for me to crown those kids and let them know, you're just as worthy of a crown as anyone else.
Wow,
So
I love that.
I am so excited. To do
yeah,
that.
and I'm having a vision of the women and men. Is it for boys at all? Are you doing a boy version?
Men. I might do
Okay.
a king and queen. Yeah.
Okay, that'd be cool. Yeah, and I'm thinking about the because you said kids to crown these kids. So I thought, oh, maybe girls and boys. I'm just like envisioning the people that feel called, that God speaks to, that join your pageant for this new purpose, and that this experience that they have with you, the short moments, the just one-on-one little time that they have, and those that have a longer experience, maybe they come back and compete several years in a row, that this will be an experience that shapes who they are and who they become.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Oh, it's going to be really, really incredible. Gosh. Well,
thank you.
Allyson, you've got so many wonderful things brewing. I would love for our audience to be able to stay in touch with you. Where are the best places that they can connect to hear more about when the book launches and when the pageant is stirring, to be able to send their applications and stuff? Where is the best place to find you online?
The best place, you can go to my website. It's AllysonRowe.com. Just easy, my name.com. That has links to all of my social media sites on there. Also just different links to what I'm doing, different ways to get in contact with me. My Facebook is Allyson Rowe. I'm always on there posting stuff, updates, encouragements. Also, my Instagram is Allyson M. Rowe. Same thing, always posting stuff on there. And then my YouTube channel is Allyson Rowe. I always do videos, things that the Lord's speaking to me. I also get tons of questions that I address and speak into on YouTube. So, but I would say just kind of an overall encompass is AllysonRowe.com. It'll take you to any of those.
That's wonderful. Good. I'll put all of those links in our show notes and below the video so that everyone can click on those and make sure that they connect with you. And maybe even they'll have some questions or comments on this specific video that you could respond to too, which could be helpful to guide their steps. So Allyson, thank you again so much for being here today, for sharing vulnerably your story and all of the takeaways that I know are just going to be gold for these women. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you so much, Alycia.
We'll see you next time.
Okay.